Hey, what's happening? Week 3 over with. We had some good ones this week. Well, we had a couple good ones. And we had a beatdown. Y'all ready? Hit the music. What up? What up? What's happening? Week 3 over. It's time to look at these matchups and see who won, who lost. Did I get a win for my birthday? If you could tell, I'm in a good mood. Hey, yes, sir. I'm in a good mood for a good reason. But yeah, man, let's get into these matchups. Like I said in the intro, we had a beat down and we had a stinker. And some teams that put up some big time numbers this week. So let's jump right into it. All right, as you can see, I don't have the matchups on the screen because I ain't trying to reveal all of the matchups, all of the scores at one time. But you can get, if you can take a look at the records here, you can kind of get a clue of what happened this week if you remember all the matchups. But I believe the first matchup we're going to get into is the beatdown of the week. Damn! Put your glasses back on. Man, beatdown of the week. And that is going to be 3 Ameagles versus Bring It On Nash. 3 Ameagles took the victory by 71 point something. I projected 3 Ameagles to win. And I said that, she got those 3 Eagles. So if the Saints show up and shut them down, she going to have a hard time winning. Saquon Barkley said, hold my Gatorade. Brother, let me show you something real quick. 35.6 from Saquon Barkley, 17 carries, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2-point conversion. One that touchdown, one of those touchdowns was over 40 yards. He had 4 receptions and 9 yards in the receiving game. 35.6 from Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts, he's continuing to turn the ball over so far this season. He's having a rough time this season. 10.94 fantasy points. Jalen Hurts has been struggling taking care of the football. Zach Moss with a big game tonight on Monday Night Football. I'm recording this after the games. 12 carries, 58 yards, 1 touchdown, 5 receptions, 39 yards in the receiving game. 5 receptions on 6 targets in the receiving game. Okay, Zach Moss, I see you. That was a shocker of a game. I did not expect. I'm sure nobody expected the Commanders to be up the way that they were up. They played an excellent game tonight, and they were able to get the victory on the road on Monday Night Football. Shout out to Jaden Daniels. He showed out. But 18.2 for Zach Moss. Devontae Smith had 7 catches, 10 targets for 79 yards, and that was a dirty hit. I don't care what nobody say. That was a dirty hit by that Saints defender. Hate to see a player go down on a play like that. I'm not so sure if he's gonna play next week. It was pretty ugly. But he had 11.4 fantasy points. Jawan Jennings, 11 receptions on 12 targets, 175 yards, and 3 tutties. 3 touchdowns for 43 points. 43. He almost matched Alvin Kamara last week. Alvin Kamara, I believe, had 47 points last week. It was a great spot start. I started him as well in one of my leagues, and it was full point PPR, so he had even more. But yeah, like Jawan Jennings showed up and showed out when Deebo Samuel was out, and George Kittle. This game was also weird. The Rams came back and won that game, but Jawan Jennings, before, he put up his numbers before that. 43 fantasy points from Jawan Jennings. Sam Laporta went down with an injury this week. 2 catches on 2 targets. 36 yards for 4.6. Come on, man. What is going on with these tight ends? Jacoby Myers, 7 receptions on 9 targets, 62 yards, and a touchdown, and also a 2-point conversion. Jacoby Myers, 17.7 fantasy points. Look out now, Jacoby Myers. I ain't think that one was going to pan out. When I saw Jacoby Myers in the starting lineup, I was like, okay, Jacoby Myers made a starting lineup. Okay. Yeah, he did. He showed out. 17.7. Dare Ogunbowale, I think is how you say it. Dare Ogunbowale. I think I nailed it. Let's take a look and see. Let's take a look. Look at that. Look at your boy. Dare Ogunbowale. 2 receptions for 28. He didn't even have a carry. Oh, snap. 2 receptions for 28 yards. He had 3.8 fantasy points. She just had to plug somebody in, I guess. Who you got on the bench? She threw Zeke on the bench. Zeke didn't play. Man, 3 carries, 6 yards. 1 catch for 6 yards. Christian Kirk had 8 receptions on 10 targets for 79 yards, 11.9 points. But she threw him on the bench because she was tired of, look at that. She was tired of that right there. She was tired of that right there. So she threw him on the bench for Ogunbowale. But Joe Mixon was out. She was like, well, maybe Ogunbowale, he'll get some, he'll get some production as well. They probably won't just lean on Cam Akers the whole game. So let's throw him in. That's probably what the mindset was behind this. It's just they did actually play Cam Akers majority. Let's see, what was the snap percentage? 42% of the snaps. With 42% of the snaps, you would expect more than this. I ain't saying you would expect 15, 16, 17 touches or nothing like that. But you would expect to see more than that. But look at that score. Look at that score. The Vikings won 34-7. The Vikings are steadily proving me wrong every week. They're proving me wrong, making me look more and more dumb. Just like my starts of the week this week. My goodness. Anyway, we'll get into that later. And bring it on Nash, man. 77.9 points. CJ Stroud had a dud. Rashad White had a dud. Austin Eckler, he was actually producing out there. I know it's not a lot of touches, but when he was touching the ball, he was looking good out there. 12.7, and then he went down and was evaluated for a concussion. So he was ruled out for the rest of the game once that happened. But 12.7 fantasy points. Austin Eckler has been proving me wrong as well so far. Tyreek Hill, 5.5. They got the backup, Skylar Thompson, I believe is his name, and I think he went down with an injury. So, yeah, it's just all bad with the Dolphins right now. 3 receptions on 5 targets for 40 yards. You hate to see that. Allen Lazard, I think that was the Thursday night football game, 12.3. Jake Ferguson, 12.5. Like that right there, 12.5 from your tight end, like you doing a victory dance. Like you doing a happy dance right now. If you get 12.5 from your tight end. 6 receptions on 11 targets for 95 yards. Yes. Let me get that from my tight end, please. Please. Everybody's begging for that from their tight end right now. So that's great. As far as what's been going on with tight end, that is great. Brandon Ayuk was 7.3, 5 receptions on 10 targets for 48 yards. Man, how many drops did he have? Did they show that? No. Man, it seemed like he had about 2-3 drops. He's struggling right now. Gabe Davis, I said I just can't. I just can't trust Gabe Davis. He one of those people that I don't know if I can ever start. Like, I just can't trust him. I had Gabe Davis last year, and when I tell you I struggled with him, every single time I started Gabe Davis, he either scored something like this or 0. And every time I benched him, he scored double digits. And it's like, what is going on? Just get him off my team. Because every time I play him, he don't do nothing. And then when I put him on the bench, he produce. Get out of here. Somebody come get him. So you won't see me with Gabe Davis. 2 receptions on 6 targets for 18 yards. Man, that's tough. Eagles defense was 7 points. Man. And then on the bench, nothing. Nothing on the bench. That was the beatdown of the week. Congratulations, 3 Ameagles. All right, next up, we got the Blue Flame versus the Underperforming Jabronis, and this was a good one. As you see, Underperforming Jabronis got his first win. He got his first win, and it was a nail biter, y'all. It looked like he was about to be 0-3 until Terry McLaurin caught that 29-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. When Jaden Daniels threw that ball, it seemed like it was in the air for 15 seconds. Like, it just seemed like that ball was just going and going and going. It looked like it was a longer pass than just 29 yards. And I just knew that he was throwing that ball away. It looked like that was an overthrow. But that ball floated and it came on down, and Terry McLaurin did the toe drag swag. Man, he was able to catch that ball in the end zone, 4 receptions, 100 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets. You love to see that from Terry McLaurin. We've been waiting on it. Last week he had the targets, he had the receptions, but everything was short. Nothing was down the field. We finally seen some shots down the field tonight. And man, yes indeed, breaks out on prime time. Yes. Big time game from Terry McLaurin. That's what we've been waiting on. But like I said, it was a nail biter. This was a good game. Blue Flame had Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, he wasn't doing nothing all game long. Then we get to the fourth quarter, and he put up majority of those points in the fourth quarter. I want to say he went into the fourth quarter with like 10 points and ended up with 33.86. And over here we have Jared Goff. The Lions were able to get the win, that's all they care about. But right now, Jared Goff, he's not looking like a startable fantasy option at the quarterback. And you want to say, he's a streaming quarterback, play the matchups and when he's at home. But when the matchup was good and he was at home, he scored 15.38. Game when he was at home, 8.78. Good matchup on the road, but it's still in the dome, 18.56. So what do you do with Jared Goff right now? J.K. Dobbins finally came down to earth, 15 carries, 44 yards, 3 receptions, 10 yards, 6.9 fantasy points. Ramondre Stevenson, we went over that, had that 0.3 on Thursday Night Football, and that hurt. CeeDee Lamb, that hurt. 4 receptions on 7 targets, 67 yards, and a fumble loss. That hurt. You would expect, look, Dak Prescott had 28 he had 51 attempts and only 7 targets for CeeDee Lamb. 379 yards and only 67 went to CeeDee Lamb. Marvin Harrison Jr. was able to get another touchdown this week. 5 receptions on 11 targets. 64 yards and a touchdown, 14.9 fantasy points. Had Freiermuth, 4 receptions, 33 yards, 5.3. Devon A-Chain came down to earth, 7.3 fantasy points. Brian Robinson had 16 carries for 33 yards, but he had a touchdown, 10.2 fantasy points. And he easily could have had 3 touchdowns tonight. They were giving him opportunities to score at the goal line, and he was getting stuffed. That was good for Underperforming Jabronis, but it was terrible for the Blue Flame. This was a good one. Packers defense over here scored 21 points. Terry McLaurin with 20. Nico with 10.6. He had 4 receptions on 10 targets for 86 yards. At the end of that game, they put Davis Mills in, and I think it was like 3 or 4 straight end zone targets at the end. And I want to say on 3 of those targets, Nico was open. And David Mills missed him. And they were not able to connect. And he wasn't able to get that touchdown. So 10.6 for Nico Collins. Dalton Kincaid finally scored tonight. Only 3 receptions, 5 targets, 41 yards, but a touchdown, 11.6. Let me get that from a tight end. You love to see that. Gary Wilson, we went over that on Thursday Night Football, 11.8. Rashid Shaheed with the goose egg, the donut. Nothing. You ain't do nothing.
Not a damn thing.
I had Rashid Shaheed as the starter of the week this week. The matchup was good. I just knew that he was going to have another one of those long touchdowns, and it was there. It was there, but he dropped it. He dropped the touchdown. 0 receptions on 5 targets. So I missed on that one. That wasn't the only one I missed on. I missed on almost every last one. Almost, I think. Woo, it was a rough week. Gus Edwards, 0.9. 3 carries for 9 yards. Hold on, what is that? 35% of the snaps. And it's not like it was a blowout. It was a low scoring, close defensive game. So it wasn't a blowout to where he's game scripted out of the game or whatever like that. It's just they're going away from old Gus. Jahmyr Gibbs was 16.3. He had 16 carries, 83 yards. And then he had that 20-yard hook and lateral touchdown, which they put that as receiving yards, but he had no targets and no receptions. So that's weird. But yeah, 16.3 from Jahmyr Gibbs. Underperforming Jabronis gets his first victory, goes to 1-2, and Blue Flame drops down to 1-2. Next up, we got Crown Me Now versus OVOCrew. OVOCrew came into this game 2-0, and Crown Me Now gave him his first L of the season. Kirk Cousins with 13.1. This could have been and should have been more. Jonathan Taylor with 28 points, 23 carries, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a reception for 25 yards. Man, Kyron Williams, 24 carries, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 receptions, 27 yards for another touchdown. 30.6 points for Kyron Williams this week. Showed up, showed out, and they were able to get the win against the 49ers this week. Drake London, 6 receptions, 67 yards, and a touchdown. 15.7 fantasy points against the Chiefs. Amari Cooper, there we go. There we go. I said, come on, Deshaun Watson. If you can't get it going against the Giants, then you gotta go. 7 receptions on 12 targets for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. Amari Cooper is an excellent wide receiver. He's an excellent wide receiver. He's an excellent route runner. He's a true technician at the wide receiver position. He's really good. 24.1 fantasy points against the Giants. Brenton Strange, 2 receptions, 5 targets, 12 yards. But he had a touchdown, dog. That good old deodorant, dog. 8.2 fantasy points. Zach Charbonnet with 18 carries, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 receptions on 4 targets for 16 yards. Finished with 24.2 fantasy points. Big time week from Zach Charbonnet. Zamir White, I said I missed all over the place with my starts of the week. Zamir White was one of them. 10 carries, 34 yards against the Panthers. He only played 22% of the snaps. I did not realize that. 22%? Wow. With 22, you had 10 carries on 22% of the snaps. That's crazy. But only getting 34 yards on those 10 carries against the Panthers. Bengals defense, -2. On the bench, he had Jaden Daniels go off with 32.06. Had Samaje Perine with 5.5. Cortland Sutton scored 10.3. Anybody else? Nobody else to mention. Okay. OVOCrew had Patrick Mahomes. He finally hit that 20-point threshold for the first time since week 12 of last year. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Aaron Jones had a big-time game this week. 19 carries, 102 yards, 5 receptions, 46 yards, and a touchdown. 25.3 fantasy points. David Montgomery, 23 carries, 105 yards, and a touchdown. 3 receptions for 17 yards, 21.7 fantasy points. Xavier Worthy, another one that I mentioned. But I will say this, though. I mentioned him as a quote-unquote honorable mention. I said Rashee Rice was my actual starter of the week, But I wanted to mention Xavier Worthy because I thought that he would get a little bit more production, a little bit more work, more gadget plays, more targets. But it didn't happen. I mean, he had 3 carries, only 4 targets though, and he finished with 4 fantasy points. Chris Godwin, he 14.3. He scored a touchdown this week. So I'll take that as a hit on stars of the week. Zach Ertz finished with 6.3, 5 receptions for 38 yards. Travis Etienne, 11 carries, 68 yards, 4 receptions on 6 targets for 17 yards, finished with 10.5. I don't know what to say about the Jaguars right now. Man. George Pickens, 8.2. Chiefs defense, 5 points. What you got on the bench? Trevor Lawrence on the bench? Man, they say you look like sunshine from Remember the Titans, but the sun ain't shining on you, brother. You've been playing terrible. Cordero Patterson with 6.3 fantasy points. Deonta Foreman. This right here. This was weird because last week Deonta Foreman had 14 carries. I forgot how many yards he had, but he had four. I know he had 14 carries, and Jerome Ford only had 7 carries. And that was out the blue. It's like, wow. Okay, so are they leaning more towards Deonta Foreman? Okay, well, okay. I might be thinking about starting him then. You know what? I'm going to put him on my starts of the week. 2 carries, 5 yards. Man, what is going on here? Deontay Johnson, 8 receptions on 14 targets, 122 yards, and a touchdown. All they needed was Andy Dalton. OVOCrew took his first L of the season. Next up, we got the CMC Adams Party versus Team D Money 81. D Money 81, 141.2 fantasy points, big time week. CMC Adams Party, 93.08. He had Lamar Jackson with 27.98 fantasy points. James Conner with only 3 against that Detroit Lions defense. I just thought that he would get a little bit more production in the passing game, but he only had 1 target. Alvin Kamara had 26 carries for 87 yards, 3 receptions for another 40 yards, 14.2 fantasy points. Devontae Adams only 6 fantasy points. Big Mike only 2.7 fantasy points going up against Patrick Surtain. Man, only 17 yards? Wow. Dallas Goedert with 24 fantasy points, 10 receptions, 170 yards. He scored 24 fantasy points without a touchdown. That is a humongous week from a tight end. That's his best game by far. 5.3, 5.1, 24. And that put him all the way up to the number 1 tight end off of 1 good game. That just let you know tight ends, they're down. Jameson Williams, 1 reception for 9 yards. 1 carry for -7 yards. 0.7 fantasy points. Adam Thielen was able to get in the end zone this week, but he went down with an injury on that touchdown. 3 receptions, 40 yards, and that touchdown finished with 11.5 fantasy points. And the 49ers defense, man, I thought this was a great play going up against the Rams. The Rams missing a lot. I thought the 49ers would win by at least 17 points. I said it in our group chat. And it looked like it was about to happen. And then the Rams just stormed back and they won that game. That was crazy. So the 49ers defense finished with 3 fantasy points. Team D Money 81. Like I said, he had a big time week. Had 25 points from Aaron Rodgers on Thursday Night Football. Derrick Henry with 31.9 fantasy points against the Cowboys. 25 carries for 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. 1 reception for 23 yards. The Cowboys rush defense, they're struggling right now. They are struggling. Defense, period. They're struggling. Josh Jacobs, 5.3 fantasy points, 14 carries, 43 yards, 1 reception for 5 yards. He wasn't able to score a touchdown this week. 5.3 fantasy points. Jamar Chase, I knew this was the week. Everybody saw this coming. This was the week. Playing against the Commanders at home, Monday Night Football. This is the week we're going to see Jamar Chase. DK Metcalf with 22.4 fantasy points. That's 2 big weeks in a row for DK Metcalf. You love to see that. Hunter Henry with 1.9 fantasy points on Thursday Night Football. Jerry Jeudy with 6.7. DeAndre Swift was another one of my starts of the week. And the 13 carries for 20 yards against the worst rush defense in the NFL. The worst rush defense in the NFL. 13 carries, 20 yards. Sound the alarm. And the Steelers defense with 12 fantasy points against the Chargers. All right, look at y'all bench. All right, got Anthony Richardson, man. He has so far he's been looking like a bust. Bucky Irvin. He's about to get more work. 9 carries, 70 yards. 3 receptions, 14 yards. Finished with 9.9 on limited work. Let's look at that snap percentage. On 32% of the snaps, yeah, that needs to be closer to 50. And to be honest, it needs to be 55, 45, and Bucky Irvin with the 55. Bucky Irvin needs majority of the snap percentage. Jamal Williams, Alexander Madison, only 3 carries for 7 yards, but he had a touchdown, dog. 3 receptions for 37 yards in the passing game. That's good. On 44% of the snaps, Cowboys defense with -1. Oh my goodness. DJ Moore over here for 11.2 on the bench. Rome Odunze with the big time week. 22.4. 6 receptions on 11 targets for 102 yards and a touchdown. It could have been more, but Caleb Williams, he is struggling on the deep pass. He's struggling on deep throws. He continues to miss wide open receivers. And I believe Rome Odunze was one of those throws that would have been for a nice yardage touchdown. Congratulations, Team D-Money81, with your victory, 141.24 fantasy points. That's a big time week. Next up, we got the nail biter of the week. Justin Kupp Show was able to defeat B-Smoove Gaming. He was able to defeat him by 3.02. And it came down to Monday Night Football. As you can see, B-Smoove Gaming had Josh Allen. Justin Kupp Show had Joe Burrow. Josh Allen started first, and he was going off. He did everything in the first half. All 4 touchdowns were in the first half. If Jacksonville would have done anything to try to keep it close, to make it a shootout, he could have scored unlimited amount of points because the Jaguars defense had no answer at all. At all. So, Justin Kupp Show, you better be thanking the Bills defense and the Jaguars offense. Because if the Jaguars offense would have done anything to keep it somewhat close to the point to where Josh Allen could have played in the fourth quarter, not even a whole fourth quarter, just some of the fourth quarter. If he would have just played some of the fourth quarter, it probably would have been a different outcome. 38.92 for Josh Allen. Bijan Robinson with 12.2. Ty Chandler with 1.3. What's the snap percentage on Ty Chandler? 35% of the snaps all 3 weeks. So they are consistent with that. 35% of the snaps. Malik Neighbors with the big time week again. 8 receptions on 12 targets, 78 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 24.2 fantasy points. Tyler Johnson, 3 catches, 20 yards, 3.5 points. Brock Bowers, 3 catches, 41 yards, 5.6 points. Stephon Diggs had 10 receptions on 12 targets for 94 yards, 14.92 fantasy points. He also completed a pass for 13 yards. The Vikings won 34-7, dog. Man. Chris Olave with the big week. I should have said Chris Olave for the starts of the week, but I had to say Rashid Shaheed, didn't I? Chris Olave was 17.6 fantasy points. Seahawks defense with 13 fantasy points. Joe Burrow. So, like I said, this game came down to Monday night. Josh Allen did his damage early and got it over with. And so it came down to Joe Burrow. He needed one more touchdown from Joe Burrow. And he got that touchdown. That it was the second touchdown to Jamar Chase. That's what gave Justin Kupp show the victory this week. 33.36 fantasy points for Joe Burrow. Big time week. Jordan Mason, 19 carries, 77 yards. 11 yards in the receiving game on 2 catches, 9.8 fantasy points. Had him as a start of the week. It was a juicy matchup. The work is there for Jordan Mason. And to only see 9.8 fantasy points, oh man, it's like, wow. Wow. So that was another miss that I had on starts of the week. Devin Singletary, 16.8 fantasy points. Justin Jefferson, 17.1 fantasy points, 81 yards and a touchdown on 6 catches. Quentin Johnston, again, he keeps producing. Well, it's 2 weeks in a row. I could have sworn he scored week 1, but he scored 2 touchdowns week 2. That's what it was. Quentin Johnston is proving me wrong. He's proving everybody wrong right now. I mean, 2 receptions, 44 yards. It's not like that is just the best work. But compared to what everybody thought of him, that's what makes it look like the best. 11.4 fantasy points for Quentin Johnson. Mark Andrews with the donut. You did nothing. Nothing.
Not a damn thing.
1 target. Look, I know they didn't throw the ball much. They were running the ball. I believe I saw that they had 45 run plays. They had 60 total plays, and they ran the ball 45 times. If I'm not wrong, I have to vet it. But that's a lot. But look at this. 33% of the snaps. This has been the weirdest year. Everybody thought the tight end position was back this year. And no. It's worse. It's been worse so far. 0 points for Mark Andrews. T. Higgins with 5.4 in his first game. Had 6 targets. You like to see that. First game of the season. Only came down with 3 of them for 39 yards. Finished with 5.4. Chuba Hubbard with 27.4 fantasy points. 21 carries, 114 yards. 5 receptions, 55 yards, and a touchdown in the passing game. And the Bills defense scored 13 points tonight for the Justin Kupp show with a close victory this week. 134.26 to 131.24. Congratulations, Justin Kupp show. You are the final undefeated team in the league. And last but not least is yours truly. Happy birthday to me. I was able to get the victory. Sometimes it's better to be lucky, because I only scored 100.38 fantasy points. That's not the best. It just so happened I went up against MileHighClub this week, and he had a complete stinker this week. 67.82 fantasy points for MileHighClub.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
This guy stinks. Stinks. Kyler Murray, 16.78 fantasy points. I had him as a starter of the week. 16.78 fantasy points from a quarterback. I can't count that as a win, so that's a miss. James Cook, 11 carries, 39 yards and a touchdown. 4 receptions on 5 targets and 48 yards in a receiving game. And that incomplete pass right there, that miss, that should have been a touchdown. That should have been a deep touchdown. I think it would have been like a 30-something yard touchdown. So that would have been like 5 receptions, 78 yards, and a touchdown in the receiving game. But I can't be greedy. 16.7 fantasy points. I'll take that every single week from your big dog. Lay it down, I'm a cook for life. Yeah. Big time week. Tony Pollard, another one of my starts of the week, and you made me look bad. I got a lot riding on you this year, Tony Pollard, and ever since week 1, I mean, yeah, you scored 12.7 last week, 3.6 yards per carry this week, 2.33 yards per carry. Woo! Stinks! That stinks! 4.4 fantasy points. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 17 fantasy points at 7 receptions, 75 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. Zay Flowers, the week that I finally put you in, that just had to be the week y'all want to run the ball like it's 1993. 4 targets. Week 1, he had 10 targets, 6 receptions. Week 2, he had 11 targets, 7 receptions. Week 3, finally put him in my lineup. Just give him 4 targets. That's all. Come on, man. And I also had him as a starter of the week, so that's another L. Told you I had L's all over the place on starts of the week. Trey McBride, 3 receptions on 6 targets, 25 yards for only 4 fantasy points. And he went down with an injury in concussion protocol, man. Oh my goodness, the tight end position is rough this year. Darnell Mooney with 10.6 fantasy points on Sunday Night Football, caught all 8 of his targets. I thought that he had 9 receptions. I could have sworn that it was 9 receptions, but it says 8 here. I don't know if it was a stat correction or what, but it says 8 for 66 yards, 10.6 fantasy points. Rashee Rice, start of the week. I got to take that dub. 12 receptions on 14 targets, 110 yards and a touchdown, 25.1 fantasy points. Big dog, I believed in you this year. I drafted you everywhere. I'm in 3 redraft fantasy leagues, and I draft you in all 3 leagues. So I believed in you this year. Everybody was looking at the suspension. I said, nope, it's not going to happen this year. And even if it does, it's at the end of the season. I'll take you. And you've been producing for me, so I appreciate you, big dog. Rashee Rice. And the Bucs defense, start of the week, stinks. 26-7 against the Broncos at home. Against Bo Nix. 2 fantasy points. Let's take a look and see what I had on the bench. So I had Derek Carr on the bench, 9.98 fantasy points. Got Kareem Hunt stashed. Najee Harris, 11.1. Guess what happened, though? Arm injury. Harris was wearing a sling around his right arm elbow in the Steelers locker room Monday. Come on, man. And then Jaylen Warren got hurt as well. So it's looking like it's finna be the Cordero Patterson show. Brian Thomas had 5 receptions on 9 targets for 48 yards, 7.3 fantasy points. Jalen Naylor with 1 carry for 3 yards, 3 receptions on 4 targets, 31 yards, and a touchdown. I had him as a sleeper this week, and he scored that touchdown, 10.9 fantasy points. A lot of people would have taken that this week. And I picked up Mike Gesicki. I picked him up last night, like late last night, because I saw Trey McBride went down with that injury. So I was like, well, let me just get somebody that I can pick up, now, so I won't have to fight in the waivers. So I said, let me just pick up Mike Gesicki just in case if something happens in Monday Night Football, something happened to one of the receivers. I know Higgins going to play, but if something happened to where, Gesicki go back to that guy being targeted more, I already have him. He had 4 receptions on 5 targets for 47 yards, 6.7 fantasy points. Hey, 6.7 that is a great floor for a tight end. That's great. I would take that. As a fill-in tight end, absolutely I'll take 6.7. Absolutely, because if not, look, you got Travis Kelce here with 5. Come on now, I'll take 6.7. So if I got to fill in at tight end next week with Mike Gesicki, hey, dog, I'll take that 6.7. Do it again. I'll take it. And I'll be happy about it. All right, MileHighClub with the stinker. So Baker Mayfield with 10.52. Breece Hall with 16.3 on Thursday Night Football. We already went over that. Jerome Ford with 8.5 fantasy points. Take a look at his snap percentage. 79% of the snaps. So they corrected what they did last week. What? They got some splaining to do. Some splaining, yeah. Not explaining. No, y'all got some splaining to do. Why did he only get 44% of the snaps last week? Why? Then this week, you know what? we're going to go and give it back to you. We just wanted to trick everybody. Next week we play the Giants next week. It's a great matchup. Well, we wanted to trick everybody and make everybody think Deontay Foreman is going to get a lot of work. We're going to get right back to you, big dog. He only had 37 yards on those 10 carries, 3 receptions for 33 yards. In the passing game, finished with 8.5 fantasy points. Michael Pittman, I believe I said on the last video that Michael Pittman is not a startable player in fantasy. You cannot trust Michael Pittman right now. 4 receptions on 5 targets, 36 yards, 5.6 fantasy points. Calvin Ridley with only 3 targets. 1 reception on 3 targets for 9 yards. Travis Kelce, 4 receptions, 5 targets, 30 yards. That's more than what he's done. That's an improvement. 5 fantasy points is an improvement. He had 4.9 in week 1, so it's basically the same as week 1. Then week 2, 1.1, and then week 3, 5 fantasy points for Travis Kelce. I thought this was the week we were going to see the Travis Kelce that we know, but it wasn't. Carson Steele, 7.9 fantasy points, 17 carries, 72 yards, 1 reception for 2 yards, played 62% of the snaps. I want to see how they're going to work in Kareem Hunt, but he had 4.2 yards per carry. You always like to see over 4 yards a carry for your running back. You don't want to see nothing in the 3s and definitely not in the 2s. Wan'Dale Robinson, 7 receptions, 8 targets, 61 yards. And the Titans defense with 3 points. So this lineup right here, like I said, Baker Mayfield, 10 points. Stinks. Jerome Ford, 8 points. Stinks. Michael Pittman, 5.6. Stinks. Calvin Ridley, 1.1. Stinks. Travis Kelce, 5 points. And you know what? I ain't even gonna say stinks for that, because 5 points from your tight end. Look, at least it wasn't 3 or 2 or 0. At least it's more than my tight end. Titans defense, 3 points, stinks. Let's take a look at his bench. He had Emmanuel Wilson on the bench, 12 carries, 50 yards, 2 receptions, 35 yards, and a receiving touchdown. Let's look at your snap percentage. Okay. Played 41% of the snaps, and Walker was out, Keenan Allen was out, Addison was out, and Romeo Doubs, 2.3. That's it. I got the victory for my birthday weekend. So I'm in 5 total fantasy leagues, and I got 4 victories this week for my birthday. So I went 4-1. I'm actually, so far in all 3 weeks, I've went 4-1 every week. If we can keep that up, I'll be happy. So yeah, that was the recap for week 3 with our matchups. Let's take a look at the division standings right now. The 3 Ameagles is now number 1 in D-Generation X. She owns the tiebreaker due to points scored. She has 359.18 fantasy points. Crown Me Now has 346.3. OVOCrew has 343.16. Plus, he just lost to Crown Me Now, so he has that head-to-head tiebreaker over OVOCrew. So they're going to be battling for that division. And Nation of Domination, Justin Kupp Show is 3-0 with 358.24 fantasy points this season. And the People's Champ, 2-1, yours truly, with 354.6 fantasy points this season. D-Money 81, 2-1 with 327.66 fantasy points. The CMC Adams Party, he's been having it rough so far. I mean, just take a look. Just take a look at this. Points against, 394.38. That is number 1 by far. The closest to him is MileHighClub, which MileHighClub is 0-3, 349.82. People are putting up points against the CMC Adams Party. He is 1-2 with 339.78 fantasy points scored. Actually, more fantasy points than D-Money 81, which is he's 2-1. B-Smoove Gaming at 1-2, 309.48 fantasy points, and MileHighClub 0-3 with 268.52 fantasy points. I forgot to keep going up here. Blue Flame got 367.54 fantasy points, but he's 1-2. Points against is only 326. So it's not like his points against is higher than his points scored. So this tells me that he had one of those weeks. The week that he won, he must have scored a lot of points. I have to take a look at that. But being 1-2 with this amount of points scored, as a matter of fact, he's number 1. He has the most points in the league, in the whole league, but he's 1-2. Underperforming Jabronis, 284 points scored with a 1-2 record. Underperforming Jabronis, that's a good name with only 200 points, but bring it on Nash, though. 243 fantasy points scored.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
That is the lowest in the league. That's the lowest. MileHighClub got 268. Bring it on Nash got 243.76 fantasy points with 343.54 points against. She is being outscored by a total of almost 100, basically 100 points. That's rough. And she's 1-2 on the season. All right, y'all, that's it. That was the week 3 recap. Your boy was able to get a victory for his birthday. Once again, 2-1. MileHighClub down to 0-3. Sorry I had to do you like that, but I had to do you like that. And underperforming Jabronis with the big time win at the end of the game tonight. But if y'all enjoyed this video, give me a like, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you won't miss out. Comment down below with what happened in your fantasy leagues. Did you win this week? Did you have anything going on tonight? Did the late Zach Moss touchdown give you the victory this week? Let me know down below. And until next time, I'll see y'all. Peace out.